Good morning, Heather. How are you?
I'm okay.
Yeah. How okay are you? What does that
I've
mean?
been, so I'm at home with my husband and my 3-year-old,
And
and
where?
I'm in Chicago. We live in the city proper, so we live in a condo, if you sort of think like a brownstone, even though ours is not a brownstone, but it's that sort of 3 families home. So
Can
we
you
live in
get
the bottom.
out at all? Can you go for walks? Or do you have to stay inside?
So we're on our, like, it's past 4 weeks here. We're like 4.5 weeks. We're almost at 5 weeks, I think. We had been going for walks and all of that. My 3-year-old went to the pediatrician last Friday because she woke up with a fever. And so as of Friday, because we couldn't conclusively say, oh, she has an earache, or oh, she tested positive for strep or influenza, the doctor recommended we behave as if she had COVID, even if we didn't necessarily think it was COVID, but the fact that we couldn't rule it out meant that for like my safety, for my husband's safety, for community spread, it was better if we act like it was COVID. So we have not been getting out since then. We've occasionally ventured out on our back deck for 5 or 10 minutes, which is not the same. But
No.
also it snowed yesterday and should snow again tomorrow. So.
Yeah, I actually looked at the weather there. I have a sister up in Vernon Hills, and it was 25 this morning, and I was going, oh.
Oh yeah, it's very cold, so I'm not super sad that we have to be inside, but
Yeah, good.
it's a little rough with the 3-year-old when it was already, because we live in the city and we don't have a yard. So I know that some people who live, further out from the city than where we live have places and they can go play in their backyard without getting out. We live really close to a couple of small playgrounds that have been closed.
Yeah.
In weeks now, and that we'd been avoiding before they were closed. And so we went from, tricycle rides around the neighborhood to nothing now. So, yep.
Pulling out your hair yet?
A little bit. We're lucky in that we have 2 floors, so we have a decent amount of space, but it's still not that much space with 4 of us, really, because we also have a 21-year-old adopted son who is home, but he is working as an Amazon delivery driver, and he's had 2 17-hour days this week. So I've seen him 2 times in the last week.
Yeah. Boy, that's rough for him too.
Yeah.
Oh, so what have you been doing? Have you been able to work on anything?
A little. I actually launched a new quilt related business like a day or 2 before this all started.
Tell me about it.
It's called quiltpatternmark.com. It's a PDF marketplace for quilt patterns. So you could go to one place and shop a bunch of different designers' quilt patterns and then download them and start working on them right away. And it's small right now. I think I have got like 12 designers on the page, and there's 50 patterns. I think it's about that. But I was hoping that she would be. I planned that launch date with the expectation that a couple days a week she'd be in daycare, and or at her grandparents', and I could spend some time really contacting new designers and building it. And I've not gotten to do.
Everything's on pause, though.
Yeah, not gotten to do any of that. I have a big long-term hand quilting project that I already had in process, and so I've been able to pull that out sometimes if she's calmly playing upstairs or in a room, and make a little more progress on that. But there's probably going to be like 150, 200 hours of hand quilting in that by the time it's done. So like progress is a relative term on that one. And I had been trying to do like her downstairs where my sewing area is. She's got like a toy kitchen and like all of her toy train stuff that she can occupy herself in solo play for kind of a long time with both of those. So sometimes I can get little bits of work done, at a time. And I thought, oh, well, I'll start a new project from one of the patterns that's on the website, and I'll do like a sew along, but just my own progress of one of the patterns, and also make one for her. Theoretically, she's 3, she's almost 4. We're probably getting full-sized twin bed or because she wants a bunk bed, 2 of them in her room in the next 6 months or so. I should probably get to work on the quilts that will go on that bed.
I won't tell you how old all of my 5 children were when they got their first mother-made quilt. One of them graduated from high school. One of them still doesn't have one.
She has 2 and a half made for me, and one. And
nice.
She has a bunch of small ones. She's basically taken over all of the mini or like practice quilts I've ever made or been given in a swap, and they now belong to various stuffed animals of hers. And she actually, of course, she's been showing a lot of interest in what I do. So since this happened, we took some scraps that a friend gave, and she laid them out on the design wall, and then she sat on my lap, and I helped, and put her hands on mine as we guided them through. And so she made a quilt with me, and we actually finished it, and now it's her stuffed animals. So
does your machine have a button where you can slow down the speed?
It does not. I have a baby lock Jane, so it's a high speed 1500 stitches per second. So I think I have a couple of smaller like backup machines, but I don't think either of them have a slow either. But also both of those machines feel very slow compared to the
I know, right?
high-speed machine I have.
I had one. I had a really nice fancy Bernina for a while and did a project when one of my kids was in elementary school, and I actually brought it into the class. They had used just regular crayons to draw, like, I think they were doing a North Carolina state symbols quilt. So they had drawn their own images on each square, and I had each of them come help sew a seam. Like, they sat around me and I tried to keep their hands in place, and they just like pedaled to the metal, and it was really, really nice to have that slow down stitch. But none of my machines now do, because I can't stand going slow. Let's go fast, right?
Right. She did decide, I kept her hands in her lap for one time when she put her foot on the pedal when we were quilting it, and she smashed it all the way down, and it went really fast and made a loud noise, and then she was like, I don't want to use the pedal.
Yeah, it works. Yeah, it's amazing how much they can do, though. You know,
yeah.
And all of my kids know how to sew, and they started pretty young, and a couple of them really love it. But like my 16-year-old, she turned 16 tomorrow, has had her own machine since she was like 7 or 8, and she was sewing for 3 or 4 years before that, and for several years just on her own. You know, I taught her the basics, and then I've always done the show them the basics and then get out of the way, don't correct anything, don't make suggestions, just let them entirely go on their own. And it takes a couple years, but then they start coming to you and saying, is there a better way to do this? Or can I do this? And they do such creative, fun, giant messes at the beginning, but it's really fun. Like this kid, her first thing that she made by herself on the sewing machine was a squid. Like a 3-dimensional stuffed squid with all the tentacles and just, you know, it had gaps where she had like tried to hand sew everything, but she was so happy with it. She still makes squids. The last one was 6 feet. It's huge. It like fills up her whole bed.
Well, I put out one of my like backup sewing machines. It's like just a little lightweight one, and I took the needle out of it, so there's no needle in it. It's not plugged in, but she can like flip the presser foot up and down, and she can push on the pedal, and there's buttons that are not useful since it's not plugged in, but she can do it. And so she'll take her little mini quilts and like quilt them under it or push them into it. And she's claimed a small one of my rulers. It was a ruler I used to use a lot, but it's like chipped in a couple of places now, so I've replaced it with a new one. But she's like, this is my ruler. I was like, yeah, that's yours. So she puts that down on it, and I'm not entirely sure she knows what she does with it. But also recently, since this happened, she started demanding a toy iron and an ironing board, because she's noticed that that's an important part of quilting. So there are not very good toy irons that I could find, especially shopping from home. So my parents, who are in Washington State, and board, but also have an entire like giant outdoor shop with welding and woodworking materials. So my dad, my mom made her a tiny little iron with like a cabinet handle as the handle, and painted it red, which was the color she requested, and shipped it from Washington. So it arrived, and yesterday she got to use it. And so she was like, oh yeah. So she push her quilt through the sewing machine, take it to I have like a mini ironing board, which is set up next to it. She iron it. And so it's pretty good.
That's so fabulous.
Yeah. So, and I mostly started giving her those toys so she would leave mine alone.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, I was lucky enough to have my own room in the house. No door, but I put a baby gate up on it. So when all 5 were home, I was not the mom who let my kids in to my studio. They would stand at the gate and throw things at me. But and now eventually when I only had 2 left at home, by the time they were like 4 or 5, I let them in to do whatever they wanted. One of them would take all of my paint out of the cabinet and build towers with it.
She likes to do that with the spools of yarn. I wish that I'd had my own space. When we first moved into this apartment, we bought it like 6-7 years ago now. It was just my husband and I. I don't think we were 100% that we'd have kids or when we'd have them. So in the like family room, downstairs living room area, I put my sewing space there, mostly because if I put it in its own room, I would have never have seen my husband, because that's where I would have been in the evening, been someplace else. And when I did it in the communal room, he'd read a book while I was sewing, or we'd watch TV together while I was sewing, and it was fine. And then by the time we got to the point where I was like, oh, this small child's going to want this room, we had acquired the 21-year-old then. And so the room that would have made the most sense for it was taken. And so we haven't. And at the time, my in-laws now live, both my brother-in-law, my husband's parents live. My brother-in-law lives a couple blocks away from us, but his parents live in Evanston, we live on the north side of Chicago, so Evanston's a suburb.
Yeah, we lived in Wilmette for a couple years and worked in Evanston.
Very close to us, so that's where Grandma and Grandpa live. But before that, they also lived in Washington State, and so I couldn't really turn the guest bedroom into a studio because it was getting a lot of use between them, who were retired and flying out here regularly, and occasionally my family would come and stay for big chunks too. So
right. Yeah, maybe someday.
Yeah.
You grow up.
I feel like when the 21-year-old gets his own place, things will probably be about the time that Julia doesn't want to sleep around the corner down the hall from us upstairs, and we'll give her his room and I'll take over her room upstairs, which has better light.
Good.
And that's
yeah, it does happen. And we will get through this thing eventually someday.
Well, I mean, it's being sort of where I am with, I am a quilter and I have projects that I care about, but a lot of the most interesting artistic ones are those long-term hand quilting ones, which sort of started when she was really small and I couldn't spend very much time in my studio because she was only asleep for an hour or so at a time, and then she'd wake up and need to eat. And so by the time I went to the bathroom or took a quick shower, myself in between, I'd have 10 minutes, and I was like, well, I can't really go down to my studio for by the time I get there, I'm gonna have to come back up. So that's sort of when I started some of the longer term hand quilting projects, because they were very easy to do with a tiny baby.
Right. Well, that's one of the fabulous thing about the stitch work and the textiles that we do as an art form and a form of expression, is that it stays done when you leave it. You come back and it's just like you left it. Paint doesn't do that. Nothing else I had found. So yeah, I started my quilting when my first out of 5 was probably 4 months old, and it saved my sanity. It was something, and my machine was just on the corner of the kitchen cabinet.
Yes, she was really small like that for a while, and then moved on to bigger hand quilting pieces. But I mean, my pieces, I don't really try to teach nationally. I'm not interested in that. My designs aren't commercial enough that I want to make my own patterns and stuff for them or anything. So the like working in the quilt industry for me had been in other methods than my own creativity. And so I had been working for Quilt Folk magazine for a while, and now I have the website myself. So I can do that as work, but the creative stuff can sort of be.
Yeah, we'll put the link down here in the video. So I can't wait to go look at it.
Yeah.
So Heather, is there anything you want to say to people to reach out to your community?
Gosh, I feel for all the parents who are trying to like work full-time and parent full-time. I only have one kid and she's not really in school. And so her like preschool half an hour of Zoom in the morning is like, let's read this picture book and wave at your friends. And I can't imagine if she were, a few years older and trying to like learn math or science. And even some of the parents of the other kids in her class who both have full-time jobs and are on meetings all day and then have a 3-year-old. I am so sorry for them. Or one of her best friends she's a single mom. So it's single momming full time and busy 3-year-old, and they can't leave the house. And I just,
more love to them.
I know. We occasionally will send her little girl isn't really a big fan of like FaceTime. So we've been texting videos back and forth so that she sees friends, but on an easily not long, and mom can sort of decide when they get doled out sort of time and they're not on a schedule. And I just like, we're all kind of getting through this the best we can. And I'm just trying to be present with her when we're awake and during the day, and especially when dad's not around. Her dad is usually really like, if he's home, he's playing with her and spending as much time as he can with her because he's, commutes to work downtown and isn't there during the day when she and I are home together in the week. Right. But he's home all the time. But also he's like, no, you can't come in. No, I'm sorry, you can't be here. Closing the door. And she hates it.
It's hard. It's really hard.
And she's almost 4, so it's not that she doesn't understand anything that's going on, but like she doesn't have a big understanding. So we've talked about it a little bit. Sesame Street Workshop has and PBS Kids have some really excellent guidance on how parents should explain coronavirus and this to their kids, which we have followed.
Excellent.
But so she'll talk about it, but she also asks weird questions because she's trying to find the boundaries of it. I'm just trying to like be present and with her as much as I can since I'm able to. And if you aren't able to, like, I feel for all my friends who are like trying to spend hours and hours teaching their kids. I'm like, are they really gonna flunk out of the 4th grade if you just let them do whatever they want for 2 months this year? Like,
yeah, just be okay with it. Be gentle on ourselves.
Yeah.
We're all in the same boat. So, well, some of us are really.
Yeah.
So reach out to friends, try to support each other, help each other. I just had an idea that I think I'm going to send out to the neighborhood of having a car dress-up party parade.
Oh, fun.
And, give everybody a week to think about it, and then let the kids sit on their front steps, because we have a neighborhood we could drive around. But dress up the cars and then parade them around or something.
We figured out through one of the story times that we live very close, much closer than I imagined, to one of her daycare friends. And so we will sometimes, when we could leave the house, we would ride our tricycle past his house. And if he was sitting in the front window, we could wave, and his mom would open the window and we'd yell from the sidewalk. And that was very exciting for both of them to see each other in real life.
Yeah. Well, Heather, it has been delightful to talk to you, and I appreciate your taking time this morning to say hi to people. I can't wait to look at your pattern website.
Yeah, Quilt Pattern Mart.
Yeah. So have a lovely day and good luck. Good luck with the little one.
Thanks for inviting me to chat.
It's been a delight. Bye.
Bye.